So I'm very excited about that. Now, there's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take this global cable of Satan-worshiping pedophiles out. And I think we have the president to do it. And so I'm very excited about that.
I think she meant cabal, not cable. But in any case, that was Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia talking about her belief in the QAnon theory of a global pedophile ring. Democrats on this day, and hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster in Lebanon, Connecticut. So pleased to have you with us on this special edition of Quick Hits News on the HAPS app. A little bit of news to get to, and we're going to bring in Ken Del Vecchio, who's our legal expert and political strategist. And Ken, Democrats today have now warned Kevin McCarthy, I think it was Steny Hoyer, the House Majority Leader, who warned the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, that either you take action against Marjorie Taylor Greene by stripping her of the committee assignments, education and labor, or the Democrats will have a privilege resolution on Thursday in which all of the House will have to vote on that. Good politics for Democrats, bad politics for Republican, or vice versa. What do you make of it all?
I think it would be very bad politics for the Republicans to get behind stripping her of any position whatsoever. The QAnon stuff, quite honestly, I really don't know anything about it. It sounds like crazy crap, to be honest with you. And I think that most Republicans, on the basis of the limited that we know about this QAnon thing, would think it's crazy crap. So I really don't know what her relationship, if any, is with that group. I don't know if she's just heard about different topics that they discuss or if she's involved with them. That aside, the fact that she brought these impeachment papers against Joe Biden, well, she has a right to do that as a congresswoman.
That's not the issue, though. The issue is that she's accused Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, of treason, and has said on social media that Pelosi ought to be executed. She called Pelosi, rhymes with witch, but the B word, said we're going to get rid of that B word. So the idea is that, well, she has endorsed essentially violence against fellow members of Congress, and for that reason, and because at least until today she backtracked a little bit, but at least on social media posts, at least until today, she had said that the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut, the Parkland shooting in Florida, that those were red flags, that those were not real shootings. Okay,
let's break them down really quickly, piece by piece. I certainly do not condone in any way, shape, or form anybody who would call for any kind of violence against not only any person in Congress, but anybody, period. The only time that violence is legal and moral is in self-defense of somebody or in war, which in essence is self-defense. So I completely do not in any way, shape, or form support or condone any kinds of comments like that. Calling treason against Nancy Pelosi, I don't think anything Pelosi's done is treasonous. I think that what Pelosi has done in total in terms of her calling out Donald Trump and in the same kind of things is equally as egregious. I think Nancy Pelosi should be voted out of office immediately because of numerous, not just bad policy positions, but because I believe that her acts are so disgustingly negative and false as against Donald Trump and as against many Republicans that I can understand why Republicans and independents and some Democrats feel that way towards her. The statements about those massacres that you discussed is patently absurd. They are obviously real. All that said, I personally have not read anything she said in those regards or heard anything that she said in those regards, so I can't make a judgment about them. But if they're exactly as just was stated, I do think that that's ridiculous and silly. But I don't think that she should. I find that a lot of what she's saying and speaking out in furtherance of what 70, 80, 90 million Americans believe is a beautiful thing. And I think that all Republicans should do that. The fact that she might also make some crazy statements is something that needs to be evaluated. But again, I don't have any personal knowledge of any of these statements that she's allegedly made.
Right. I mean, social media comments that she's made on camera, which she has talked about, that Nancy Pelosi should die, that she should be assassinated, that sort of thing. So, look, I mean,
if she said that, that's not only horrible, it's completely wrong. And she certainly is not in good standing, what I would say, with probably 99+% of Americans in making those kind of statements.
Oh, I agree. And then the question becomes, okay, should the Republicans then remove her themselves from the Education Committee, the Labor Committee, which is, by the way, that is fairly controversial for Democrats or for Republicans to say, okay, here are the members of the other party that we will and will not allow to be placed by their party on a committee. Does get into a little bit of a new territory, but one at least gets the sense that I think there's a growing number of Republicans who are also uncomfortable with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And clearly there's not the 2/3 votes in the House to be able to expel her. But it does seem as if there's some movement towards some sort of action against her, perhaps punishing her. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about impeachment. So Donald Trump has, over the weekend, he got rid of his 5 original lawyers that were supposed to represent him in impeachment, and they decided, mutually agreed with Donald Trump, that they would not represent him. And then he added 2 lawyers, I believe, actually, one from Atlanta and one from Pennsylvania. What's the reason why a client usually breaks ties with the lawyers a week before a trial?
Look, this isn't something that's unusual at all, especially in high-profile cases. It is on the rare side in the vast majority of cases, whether criminal or civil. But in high-profile cases, you see these kinds of attorney shifts often. And a typical basis for it is because there's strategy issues where the client feels one thing and the lawyers feel another, or when there's teams of lawyers, you're often getting lawyers with different strategies among themselves, and then the client may lean towards one lawyer or one group of lawyers versus the others. So that's the leading reason of why something like this would occur. And again, it's not unusual for these kinds of high profile matters. Another reason could be is just that there's personality differences, again, either between the client and the lawyers or some of the lawyers. So there's nothing, what I'm hearing in some of the media reports is completely false to make arguments like that Donald Trump is some kind of unruly client and that the attorneys wanted to separate from. All this kind of ridiculous speculation is just more fanfare for the fire of the fake news that's constantly been sputtered out against Donald Trump.
Well, look, and I don't necessarily believe the stuff about, look, lawyers deal with all kinds of crazy clients, so I don't believe the stuff about the unruliness to the extent that that's been reported. But there have been a number of reports sourced largely to people who were close to these lawyers who say that there was just a difference in strategy, as you were pointing out, that what Donald Trump, what the lawyers and people close to Donald Trump have been asking him to do and suggesting, look, you just got to vote in the Senate, in which 45 Republicans said they don't think it's constitutional to conduct an impeachment trial of a president who is no longer in office. That's a gift to you. They're telegraphing to you how you can, skate and end this thing. And then Donald Trump, wants the primary focus to be not on whether it's constitutional or not to try a president who's no longer in office. He doesn't want the primary focus to be on whether his actions met the legal threshold of incitement of insurrection, something that you and I talked about last week. And I think we both sort of questioned whether it got there. Donald Trump wants the primary focus to be on his claims that the election was stolen. In other words, to bring back the evidence that the courts have either not considered or have rejected. Is that wise? And look, I mean, you've got lawyers who said that's a bad strategy. We're not going to pursue that strategy. You've got 2 new lawyers who apparently said, yeah, that's fine. We can try to make that case. But it does put some Republican senators in something of a pickle.
I disagree with the lawyers who think it's a bad strategy. I think it's an absolutely outstanding strategy, and it's his best defense. Now, in nearly every trial, you're going to have alternative theories towards success. And what I mean by alternative theories can mean on objective, factual basis, or they can be on legal basis. So here, one alternative theory is a basic procedure in any civil case, and it's called, or a criminal case, it's called a motion to dismiss. And many times you can make motions to dismiss in nearly all the times, not many times, nearly all the times based purely on legal matters. You can make them with factual matters as well. So the fact that this is an unconstitutional act and trying to impeach somebody who is no longer in office is certainly the wisest and smartest move to go for initially. While you're making that argument, you should bring in the alternative factual theory, which is the primary factual argument in the case in chief. And that's that Donald Trump didn't do anything in way of incitement, first and foremost, because truth is a defense. And if it is true, or that he believed it was true with a reasonable belief, that the election was stolen from him, and he was bringing forward factual matters in view of that theft of the election, then that's an absolute defense to this. Okay, I mean, I think everybody can agree that if those numbers that I read out in last week's show that Donald Trump read aloud to the crowd on that day, on January 6th, are true, or that he had a reasonable belief that they were true, based on the following: one, that these are numbers that were testified to in front of varied state legislatures across the country. Two, they're numbers that major media, the biggest of media, were reporting and still are reporting, as far as I know.
Again, I want to stop you there because to me, I mean, it sounds more like jury nullification than, because it seems like, look, like the old argument, well, the bank was treating me badly, therefore they deserve to be robbed. I mean, it almost feels like Donald Trump is saying, I got robbed from the election, therefore I was entitled to whip up the crowd. I was entitled to incite an insurrection, rather than, I mean, saying, look, there was no insurrection, there was no incitement because it doesn't make the criminal threshold, by suggesting that he was entitled to say whatever he wanted based on his belief in the data or whatever it is. It seems like that's sort of a cockamamie strategy, because you're essentially acknowledging, oh yeah, I did whip people up into a frenzy. I deserve to.
No, I disagree, because he's not, a part of that argument is that he was not inciting people, that he was not whipping people up in a frenzy, that he was just speaking the truth. He was saying, look what happened here. This election was stolen from me. Here are the facts that show that this election was stolen from me.
Right, but that's not the part that's not the part that Democrats are going to present as part of their incitement charge. They're not going to present the video clips of him reciting the numbers. They're going to say, when Donald Trump says, and we're going to march up to the Capitol, and you have to be strong, you can't be weak, because you don't accomplish things unless you're strong. That's the part where they feel that was incitement.
It doesn't matter what the Democrats are piecemeal going to present. His major part of his defense is that I was speaking the truth. I was relying upon information and data that came from state election websites, that came from expert witnesses, that came from testimony from fact witnesses, and that came from a variety of credible sources. And I was simply saying to people simple political rhetoric of go march down to the Capitol peacefully, go fight for your rights, which is normal, regular dialogue that is not even remotely connected to violence, and that he had a basis to tell them that, because at least the talking heads in the media, meaning like politicians, pundits, and so-called legal experts, are saying that him making these statements, which they claim are false statements, is what caused the quote-unquote alleged incitement that followed. So it's necessarily a key component of his defense to say, first of all this was true as far as I knew it, and he may be saying that he still believes that it's true. And that goes to the most major point here, is if the Democrats really believe that it's false, let it get all aired out. Let all this information get out. This can be an all-in-one scenario. The hearing that Ted Cruz and the other senators and congressmen and women that we're calling for can be done during this impeachment hearing. Let it all get aired out and let everybody make their own decision. The entire country can be the jury now. So let all these facts get aired out there. I think that that's absolutely the best strategy, and I completely disagree with attorneys who think it's not a good strategy.
So you're suggesting that there's materiality to arguing whether or not the election was stolen or not, in terms of materiality related to what he's been charged with of incitement, regardless of whether we agree or disagree that it was incitement, but you feel that this is the key building block.
Based on the charges that they've levied, and based on what I can see for the type of case that they're bringing, they're arguing that these were completely false statements that Donald Trump made, that he knew that they were false, which is just not only laughable, it's absurd. When you're watching people testify in front of various state legislatures across the country to these numbers, when you're reading these numbers in civil complaints filed by lawyers in varied courts across the country, when you could read these statements that I've been told are on numerous different states' websites, when you have all these expert witnesses testing to the facts, to the matters that Donald Trump is stating, to argue that they're false in the first place is not only laughable, but it is indeed patently absurd, and ridiculous. And they're making that a centerpiece of their case. Now, whether or not they ultimately present that, that will be interesting, because if they don't present that, that's going to be the most telling thing to this entire country. That's going to tell the country that they don't believe that they're false, that they believe that they're true. And Donald Trump can certainly, as part of his defense, utilize that information as the centerpiece of it, and he should. But I do agree that he should start off in his motion to dismiss and say, hey, in the first place, it's constitutional. And in the second place, here's the whole other reason why you should dismiss it, because I was speaking truth. And on top of it, I said to go peacefully march down to the Capitol building and used regular, normal rhetoric about peaceful protesting, meaning fight for your rights.
Yeah, complexity usually gets lost in terms of media assertions about what's going to happen in a courtroom. And I do think that it's possible to both argue that this is unconstitutional for him to be tried, that it doesn't reach the criminal threshold for incitement, and, oh, by the way, that Donald Trump feels like his election was stolen for the following reasons. I think what's going to be so telling to me is what are some of these Republican senators going to do in terms of when they're then asked by reporters, or when they're asked, okay, what do you make of Donald Trump's, never mind the constitutionality, never mind the question about whether it's incitement, but simply his assertions about the election itself. How are those Republicans going to respond? And I think politically that would be interesting. It would be interesting if Ted Cruz says, I'm not going to go there. We just shouldn't have this trial. I mean, that would be one response. Or there could be the response we might see from, Senator Johnson and others who say, look, I absolutely believe that the election was stolen. Here's why. And then, then at least I think it gets the debate towards what Donald Trump wants the debate to be, even though he's not charged necessarily with lying about the election. He's charged with whipping up a crowd.
But these people have been arguing that a root cause of the alleged incitement, which the whole incitement thing is completely legal nonsense. It's legal absurdity. They're arguing that a root cause of it is they're saying what Donald Trump was saying is false, and that he knew it was false. And this is going into this significant catch-22. It's clear that tens of millions of Americans believe what he's saying, not just because he said it, but because they're watching all of these different state legislatures, reading the various complaints that were filed, reading numbers off of state websites themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they're digging themselves into a gigantic hole through this impeachment, because if this case is handled correctly and smartly by the defense team, they're necessarily going to bring this out, and they should be bringing in alternative theories. They should be trying to argue this case should be dismissed for a reason, number one, that it's unconstitutional on its face to try a former president who's not in office for impeachment. And number two, here are the factual reasons why this case fails, adjoined with legal reasons. Like, it's a legal reason too, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of that, even if you believe everything that the prosecution says is the truth, it doesn't make out an offense. So even if you do believe that Donald Trump made the varied statements about peacefully marching to the Capitol and go fight for your rights, it doesn't make out an offense. If it did, by the way, we've seen show after show on major media pointing to Democrats who have said far, far, far things that are worse than what Donald Trump said in terms of quote unquote incitement, that Democrats have said that I don't believe are incitement that any of the Democrats said. Things by Maxine Waters, for example. Things by multiple different top Democrat leaders. I don't think Maxine Waters should be impeached for what she said either, but they were far, far, far worse in anybody's logical book than what Donald Trump said. I don't think Donald Trump's words even fit into a category of bad or worse. They were just plain old "go fight for your rights" words.
I disagree, but we disagree on a couple of things. And I actually, I'm not sure where I come down in terms of the constitutionality of being able to impeach a president who's no longer in office. I get the argument that, it's kind of absurd to impeach a president, at least at the Senate stage, where the whole punishment from office when the person's already out of office. But at the same point, if I completed my crime, say of robbing a bank, and I wasn't caught, and then suppose, something should happen, I should be charged. I don't know. It just sort of feels like this whole idea of timeliness strikes me as, I don't know. I don't think I buy it, but
watch this. That's a slippery slope. And that's a very fast, dangerous slippery slope. I don't think that Joe Biden should be impeached for what Green says in Atlanta from Georgia, even though I believe that Green has a right to bring the impeachment papers. I don't think Joe Biden should be impeached for it. I think that the Democrats are creating a massively fast, slippery slope that anytime somebody does something that they just don't like the way it sounds, that either side is going to bring impeachment hearings, and not just against presidents. I think that this is opening up wild doors, and it should be closed immediately. Let's just get on with the country. Like, I'm at the point, although I like tens of millions of other Americans do want to see hearings and find out about what actually definitively happened during this election, and whatever the evidence ultimately shows, I will abide by as a jurist and say, fair enough. Let's have that out there, but really, let's just close the door on all this crap and move forward.
Speaking of moving forward, the Biden administration, at least when he was president-elect, kept saying, "Oh, you elect me, we're going to have a $2,000 checks go out the door on day one." Well, that didn't happen. You had a couple senators in Georgia who won office. Ossoff won, and Warnock won by saying, "You elect me, and I'm going to get you those $2,000 checks." And now the Biden White House is saying, "Well, now we meant $2,000 total. That because $600 went out the door under President Trump, we're aiming just for $1,400. And oh, by the way, if you make more than say $50,000, you don't qualify." What do you make of that?
Look, I happen to agree with these Democrats on this one. I didn't get the $600, and I'm not too happy that I didn't get it. I think there should be equality across the board. I think that every American should get the same amount of money. Stop drawing lines in the sand, and the money should be far greater. I mean, look, I've got a list of things here. We're paying for thousands of dollars for National Guard members to meet a phony, fictitious fears of whiny politicians to stay in Washington, D.C. We're paying for abortions around the world. We're paying for healthcare, transportation, for food, for illegal immigrants. We're paying for absurd diversity training that helps facilitate a bogus racial divide. I mean, and then I read over Rand Paul's list of wasteful spending in his recent report. There's a lot of them. $8.6 billion on counter narcotics efforts in Afghanistan. I mean, stop. Give the American people money. Help these small businesses, not just small businesses who applied for these loans and where all these bigger businesses got it. Just help out the regular Americans. I mean, we can give everybody $2,000 in addition to the sum who got the $600. Give me the $2,000 and my wife. Give it to you, David.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I'd give out my social security number right now if I knew that I wouldn't get ripped off. But no, I agree. And you know what? To the extent that people are thinking, oh, there's a civil war right now among Republicans over Tone and Marjorie Taylor Greene, I can tell you there is a civil war brewing among Democrats between progressives and centrists over whether or not Joe Biden should go ahead and do what progressives have said, and that is give everybody $2,000 at least, or give it to them every month until we're out of this, or Biden trying to be a little more careful and trying to have compromise and not wanting to spend too much and now saying, well, I didn't mean $2,000 in a check. I meant $2,000 total. I mean, Democrats are starting to rip each other apart over this, and it's a fascinating debate to watch.
I think we have a huge morale problem in our country, and that's putting it lightly. If the government under Biden right now gives everybody the $2,000, I think it's one of those things that Biden has an opportunity that I've mentioned before to become a hero to 80-90% of Americans. If he just put a halt to the lockdowns first and foremost, completely eliminate the whole lockdown matters, it would go a huge way. Give everybody $2,000 equally across the board. Even give it to the billionaires. Give it to everybody. Make people feel like they're really equal. Cut this equity word out. Just let's use equality. Treat everybody equally, and it will go a long way. So I think people like Bernie Sanders, and even though I wish those two Democrat senators from Georgia did not get elected and it was the Republicans, I agree with them on this.
One thing that's not going very far right now is literally anybody who's trying to travel right now in the U.S. Northeast. Ken, we've gotten something like 15 inches of snow in New York City. We're up to like 14 here in Connecticut. It's still snowing. They're expecting records to be shattered all over the Northeast. It's a nor'easter, and you're down in Florida. But normally, you live in New Jersey. You get to deal with this stuff. Do you miss the snow, the blizzards, the nor'easters?
In this case, I don't want the equality. My wife actually flew up to New Jersey to our place there on Thursday. My beautiful and gorgeous wife, Francine, who's also super intelligent, Dr. Del Vecchio, I should say. If there's Dr. Biden, there's Dr. Del Vecchio. And she drove back down. So she left at 5 a.m. on Sunday, right before the storm hit in New Jersey. It was about 15 degrees, but guess what? She hit it in Maryland and Virginia. So she got some of the snow anyway, but she came back to sunny Florida with 75 degrees. And in this case, I don't want the equality. I'm very happy that I have the nice weather down here. But all that said, yeah, as you said to me before we got on the show, there's something beautiful about the snow, and there's something fun about going out and, you know, playing in your snow sports. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be in the nicer weather, to be honest.
I'm with you. I tell you, Ken, we took the kids out to the snow today, and we couldn't stay out for more than 10 minutes because the wind was like 25 miles an hour. It felt like a sandstorm in our eyes. It wasn't fun at all. But there is something pretty about. I mean, in New York City, the snow is pretty for about a half an hour, and then it turns brown and ugly because of all the traffic and slushing. It's terrible. Here in the country, at least, it stays nice for at least a little while. Anyway,
so true.
Ken, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks to everybody up and down on HAPS for watching. We do this every Monday night, so send us your questions and comments, and we'll put them on. But that'll do it for this edition of Quick Hits with Ken Del Vecchio. Ken, thanks as always. Have a good week, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.